So I learned that physically that is not even possible. With the temperature that much, you basically are dead after 8 minutes.
But what I started to realize was that where my mind, this very powerful tool, was telling me I needed to get out was not when I needed to get out. That cold water will eventually kill you because either you're going to warm the ocean up or it's going to cool you down. Those are your two outcomes. So you kind of know there is a line. But where you naturally believe the line is not where the line is.
Welcome to another episode of Love Not Fear, and this time it is time for a guest edition. And I am most honored to have on the show Ryan Stramrood. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Ryan and I met 2.5 years ago in Dubai. I didn't know who he was, and accidentally I went with a swim with Ryan. And later he was the keynote speaker at an event I was at. And much to my surprise, he had quite a bit to tell about swimming. So I felt really astonished about what you had to tell, because we met prior to your keynote. And Ryan, it is also, I must tell you, you triggered something in my life as well. I actually started cold swimming myself. And that has directly to do with your talk. Not until the extreme about what you're about to tell us, but I think it's very inspiring to hear you speak about being basically an average Joe into making some spectacular changes in your life. Maybe you can tell us a little bit what happened in your old life. Who were you prior to making this huge change?
Yeah, well, you know what? I was running a successful advertising business. I was doing all the right things in life within a box. But one day I took a look and I realized I was getting fat and lazy and sitting on the couch and probably underachieving. There was always something niggling at me. But I'm not a sporty person. I love sport, but I've never been really good at any sport. And this was back when I was 29 odd years old already. So, just about to push 30, and which is a nice big milestone in anyone's life. And I remember I took a client away for a week, an incentive weekend that I was doing in my advertising business. And I was sitting on my patio with him and we were having a beer. And I was telling him that I'm not happy with myself. I'm getting fat and lazy. And he said, well, hey, why don't you join my little swimming squad? It was one of those situations when you kind of over a beer make a promise to a client that you will arrive on Monday morning at the swimming squad. And I'd love swimming, but I've no real interest in it. But Monday morning I arrived at the swimming squad and there were all these people going backwards and forwards with a coach yelling at them. And I had to decide which lane to put myself in, because you get the slow lane and the middle lanes and then right up to the fast lane. And of course, you can't put yourself in the slow lane. The ego is at the age of 29. It's too rife. So I put myself in the fast lane, but it's kind of standing on the side. It looked like where I should be. And I took off, and about 20 lengths into that, I realized I'd made a very, very big mistake. I was in some deep trouble. Anyway, cutting a long story short, I joined the swimming squad. I survived my first session barely by doing half a kilometer and then feeling nauseous with the amount of effort I did. Because once you start swimming, you've got somebody on your tail. You've got to try keep that pace up. And where I'm going with this, for the first time I got home, back onto my couch, and I sat there absolutely exhausted. And I thought the hardest thing for me to do would be to get up again tomorrow morning and go back and put myself back into that situation, which I know I had quite a lot of fear around. Because I'd been shown up and shown how unfit I really was. And everything in my life, certainly from a sporting point of view, up until that point, the norm would have been, you know what, thanks very much, I tried, but that's not for me. But yet I got up and I went back, and that just that decision probably put me on this unbelievable journey that I'm sure we'll unpack a few pieces of today.
And do you have a trick to get going? Do you have like boundaries? Say, I never miss so many times out of a streak, or how relaxed are you with yourself?
Yeah, I used to be very relaxed. I mean, I've always had proper ethics and, do things right. And I don't like to, I'm not a quitter. That's never been me. Um, but I think I was very much within a comfort zone. And what I hope we can unpack a little bit in the Love Not Fear podcast with you guys is most of us operate within comfort zones, but we don't even know we're in the comfort zone. We think we're excelling. We think we're setting these massive goals and we're pushing ourselves. But if you hear what I have to say and what I teach a lot of my audiences, you open eyes to the fact that actually a lot of us, and there are exceptions, stay within that comfort zone all the time. And that was absolutely my case.
This is definitely something I want to delve into, but to paint a picture, because you need to finish the story about this was the stepping stone and a couple of spectacular next steps evolved. So in order to get that out of the way,
Yeah.
please continue. What
I'll
happened
gladly
next?
continue. You jump in whatever time, but I'll take you. So at the swimming squad here in South Africa, in Cape Town, we've got an island called Robben Island. It's where Nelson Mandela spent, I think it's 19 of his 27 years incarcerated. And that sits about 7.5 kilometers off the Cape Town coast. It's about 4.2 miles odd. And it's surrounded by some very cold water. And to swim from that island to the beach, or from the beach to that island, is, back in the day, it was the absolute Everest of swims. If you did that, you were in the newspaper. It's a difficult swim. And at the swim squad, I remember once I, started to catch up in fitness and I started to be able to have conversations between the sets with some of the guys, I realized there was a guy in the lane that I was swimming in who had swum this Robben Island swim. And I was absolutely in awe of this human being. And I remember having more and more discussions with him. And the more I chatted to him, the more I realized he's actually quite a normal person. But how did he do this thing that is so abnormal? And in my mind, he's on this massive pedestal that I couldn't hope to aspire to. And jumping a little bit ahead, soon he's challenged me to say, right, it's time that you set Robben Island swim as a goal for yourself. And, it wasn't even, I'm not that kind of sporty driven person. That's reserved for the super elite. But I set it as a goal. And it became a fascinating goal. And it was one of the first goals I've ever set that's above what I believe I can achieve. And I hope we get to unpack that a little bit. And if you know anything about Cape Town and the oceans around us, the water's always cold. It's not Antarctic kind of cold, but in degrees Celsius, it ranges between about 14 and all the way down to 10 degrees Celsius. So if you're getting into that water in your Speedo, you don't have a wetsuit and you're not protected in any way, you are going to get a nasty bite of the cold. You're going to get that ice cream headache and you're going to get all the pain and everything that happens. So when I started to get out the swimming pool and move to the ocean, because to do the Robben Island swim, you must train in the ocean. You can't do all your training in a nice warm swimming pool. The more I was exposed to the cold water, the more I started to realize just how brutally the element of cold impacts the human, not just the body, but the mind. And the mind, when you get in that cold water, it implements pain, panic, and fear, and they come together in the split second to accentuate self-doubt. And you start to look, you become negative. You look for reasons why you could get out, not why you should stay in. And I figured out pretty quickly that us humans have not evolved at all well to handle the cold, but we've evolved very well to avoid it. So when we throw ourselves in cold water, the body and the mind does everything that it has evolved to do over hundreds of thousands of years to get you out. And, most people who jump in cold water, they feel that, they think they're enduring a little bit, and then they go out and they say, wow, look at me. But what I started to realize was that where my mind, this very powerful tool, was telling me I needed to get out was not when I needed to get out. That cold water will eventually kill you, because either you're going to warm the ocean up or it's going to cool you down. Those are your two outcomes. So you kind of know there is a line. But where you naturally believe the line is not where the line is. And that I started to figure out. And it started to fascinate me why every time I got into that cold water to train, why I can't be positive. Why can I only look for excuses to get out rather than for reasons why I can try and extend my time and stay positive and stay focused and stay goal-oriented and push myself a little harder. And over a fairly extended period, I started to realize it's just this properly powerful defense mechanism that guides us all. And my classroom is the cold water, right? So that's where I learned it. But when you start learning these lessons and you start realizing just how powerful we are steered by a subconscious defense mechanism in our heads, we start to realize where else that is applicable. And I started to realize in all the areas of my life and in business and in social and everything, I am steered by this defense mechanism. And so I started to study that a little bit, and I started to push myself a little bit further and a little bit harder in the element of cold. I got myself properly fit. I have now done, jumping ahead, Edward, I've now done the Robben Island swim 140 times, which for a long time was the most that anyone had ever done it in the world. So,
You're not the current record holder? I thought you were the record holder.
I was the record holder till about 6 months ago. There's a gentleman called Howard Warrington who has a mission to hit a certain number, and he's got a lot more time on his hands and money. And he's got his own boat, and his wife skippers for him. So every day he's out there swimming. Unfortunately, I've got some real world realities. But look, being the most has never been my mission. Robben Island is a fascinating training ground for me. And so, and this factors into my story, and what I preach in inverted commas is that what was the absolute impossible and the absolute Everest for me has now over the years become an inadequate platform on which to stand to set my next goals. It's not, if I'm training for a big swim, doing Robben Island crossings as part of my training isn't even enough. Sometimes I've got to do there and back, or I've got to do a pool set and a Robben Island. So what I'm trying to say is your perspective changes. Once you set those goals you don't think you can achieve, 99% of the time you will achieve them. And what happens when you achieve something you never thought you could? If you fail, you learn from that failure, and you take those learnings and you use them to fail forward. If you succeed, which is 99% of the time, you open your mind, you grow. And that is what happened to me. And then I took obviously my experience in Robben Island, and I set the English Channel, which is much further and known as the Everest of swims. And I eventually got that. Well, only tried once, and I got it right on my first time. I got the English Channel. That's 21 miles across. I swam 41 kilometers on the day. Speedo goggles, cap. The weather was terrible. Managed to get across, and that again opened my mind even further because I didn't think I was capable of that. And then I got into the real cold water stuff to see how far I could push myself in the element of cold, not just 16, 15, 14 degree kind of cold, all the way down to trying to setting myself a goal of trying to be the first in the world with a bunch of mates to swim a 1 mile distance in Antarctica, and ended up getting that right. In water that was -1 degree Celsius. And so that's
I learned that physically that is not even possible. With the temperature that much, you basically are dead after 8 minutes. So
correct.
You're quite alive, so you manage, but that is quite spectacular.
So a lot of training went into that, absolutely. And at the time, it was deemed as not being possible because, what all medical science was saying at the time was, there's various places you can go and there's various disagreements and debate around it. But the average person, what they can perform. Because remember, what happens when you jump into cold water, not just your mind and all the pain, panic, and fear and self-doubt and hyperventilation, but your body also implements its own defense mechanisms. And that's the blood is rushing from your extremities into your center core because it wants to keep your heart beating to pump blood to the brain. You can live without arms and legs for a bit, or maybe forever if you treat it properly. So that is one of the defense mechanisms of the body. And the more, as soon as that blood is now out of your muscles, they have nothing to give them energy. There's no oxygen supply to the muscles, so you become uncoordinated and you can't continue to perform. So once you've stopped performing, obviously the cold's going to set in quickly and hypothermia is going to follow. And if you don't get treated and get out pretty quickly, you're dead. So, and what was generally believed is possible, we decided.
You did this attempt with 2 other people who didn't make it.
Yeah.
There's a video. I believe it's online.
Yeah, we actually did it with, there were 6 of us from South Africa who did it. But through a long story, we had to split the group 3 and 3. So what you saw in my keynote was 3 of us, the first set of us giving it a go. So I'm the only one in my set of my heat, should we say, who got it right. And then later that day, the other three had a go, and two of them got it right. So there were three of us who succeeded. They had a slightly different venue and a slightly different temperature, but it's all much of a muchness. They did brilliantly. So three of us got it right at the
I
time.
guess once the first record was broken, doing the mile under a certain time, then it was deemed impossible. And the same year, three other people did it. So I think being in the second heat must have been
Yeah.
a great advantage.
I think it definitely was an advantage because they could see, okay, they're not dead. But what they also saw was the excruciating pain that we went through and the very, very difficult recovery period. You might remember in the keynote, I showed just a section of the recovery, and it's not pretty. They had to see that firsthand and know that they were putting themselves in that state, which, I think to their creditors must have made it rather scary. But yeah, so there were pros and cons of that. But yeah, but to your point, you said what I'm blessed to have done and followed, but in more recent years pioneered myself, is doing stuff that no one else thought was possible or was too scared to try. And as soon as you've done that, as you point out, it becomes a lot easier, in inverted commas, for others to do it. People follow. You open that door. So I'm never going to be the fastest and probably not the toughest either. But hopefully, I'm up there with the bravest to get it done.
This preparation for this cold swim, this extreme, this Arctic expedition of yours, how much is it mentally and how much is it physically?
Good question. Mental by far the most. All right, but by far the most, because as I said, you've got the gateway to absolute greatness, this power tool that drives us all, but it's actually our biggest limitation because of its power and because of its primary role to keep you alive. It works against what you're trying to do when you're that far out of a comfort zone and you're pushing yourself in a very, very hostile environment. You've got to overcome that. Now, the physical part is hard, but that just takes discipline. You've got to get the training done. You've got to condition your body. You've got to sit in the ice baths. You've got to make sure you're fit enough to swim a really good distance. If you're trying to swim a mile, you can't only be fit to swim a mile. You must be fit to swim many miles because it's going to be quite brutal on your body. But the hard part is the acclimatization or the what's the right word? The conditioning of your mind to be able to override that pain, panic, and fear and that self-doubt. You deny the ability of rational thought. You can only think one thought, and that is get out, not how do I make this better? And it takes quite a lot of work to figure that out.
For me, the cold swimming is also like cleaning the slate. It's cleaning every thought you have. It's just a matter of survival, and you get out so refreshed. And basically, if you die a little in the morning, then you're up to speed for the rest of the day. What can happen? That's literally what I learned. And the other thing is the power of of the breathing. If you step into the cold, there is no way you're gonna. The breathing just happens. There's no way of steering it. I mean, your body takes over some primary functions. That what I've learned.
Yeah,
And the third
correct.
one is where you are with your attention. If I feel it in my neck, if the water is really cold and I think of the cold, then it's unbearable in my neck area. But I can shift it. I can replace my thoughts and place it somewhere else, and then it's gone. I was astonished by this.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I'm sure you've learned. So you mentioned after my keynote you've dabbled in the element of cold, which is wonderful. But I challenge everyone I speak to find their own classroom. I'm not trying to encourage you to get in the cold. You have, and many other people have as well. But we all have something that teaches us, and I call it the classroom. The cold water happens to be my classroom. I don't like the cold. I really don't. I'm normal. I'm normal in most respects, and I don't like getting cold, but it challenges me so hard.
Yeah, that's a misconception. The people must ask you, "Oh, you like the cold water, but I bet you hate it
No,
as
all
much
my
as cold
friends think I
showers."
love it. But I don't. When I get in the shower, I stand there for ages till that hot water comes down before I'm prepared to get under. So I can be just
Yeah,
as soft.
I
But when
can
I'm
relate
training and when
very
I'm
much.
focused and I have my
Yeah,
goal, the element of cold really has the ability to make you tough and teach you lessons.
yeah. So, but you by doing this, you get to know your body and your limits, and it creates a hunger to explore what else is possible. I'm also interested. How do you define your end? I mean, I was thinking of this guy that lived near grizzlies, and at one point he decided to live amongst the grizzlies, and a few months later he was eaten
Yeah,
because it's not a wise idea to. So
not clever.
when is being brave becomes foolish and potentially lethal?
Yeah, very good question. I'm asked that quite often. I don't have a proper answer, but I'm very well aware. There's a fine line between bravery and stupidity. Everyone says, don't do it, you're going to die. Then you do it, and everyone says, oh, how brave was that? What a hero. But if you died or maimed yourself or something, everyone's going to go, well, we told you so, you idiot. So, that also factors very heavily in your head before I do these different challenges that I've done. Um, how do I mitigate against that? Purely from training. When I stand on stage and I show my keynotes, there's large chunks that are left out because no one wants to hear your meticulous day by day training and how you built your way slowly up to be able to jump in that water. So they maybe see kind of big leaps in the progress, but believe me, there's a lot of hard work that goes behind. There's a lot of teamwork that goes behind what we do. And once you've got a team that you can really trust alongside you, it frees you up to push a little bit harder and to, they become the umbilical cord. So when I was doing that Antarctica swim that I showed you audiences a little bit of, if it wasn't for that umbilical cord to me, that every time I took a breath, they were right there clapping and thumbs up and giving me the signals that I'm still alive and I'm still okay, even though my mind's going strange in those waters, I wouldn't have made it. So yeah, have a really good team and do the training, bite-sized chunks until you work your way up to whatever you want to do. Don't look what someone else has done and just dive in. You've got to condition for it.
When you did your channel swim, I learned that after 9 hours you hit a hard wall. You thought you couldn't finish, and the shore of France was not in sight yet.
Yeah.
What is it that people tell you? What motivates you? What were you told at that moment to continue? I believe it was 4.5 hours extra.
Correct.
Before you made it, and the weather turned
memory.
really, really nasty.
Yes. So the weather, just for some background for listeners, the weather, you want to try and find a day where the water is nice and flat and no wind, because that makes it an extremely hard swim, but throw in wind with chop and the waves all over the place makes it exponentially more difficult. And unfortunately, about 3-4 hours into my swim, the weather completely went south and was really tough. And 9 hours into my swim, I had hit the wall. The tank was empty. I couldn't take one more stroke. And I was absolutely depleted. And it's now getting dark. I'm freezing cold, swimming for 9 hours. You can't touch the support boat. If you even touch it or hang on it on the side, you're disqualified instantly. So all these things are going around your mind. You're a little head in the water, and now it's dark. You can't see France. There's no lights. There's nothing. You really feel like this is absolutely impossible. And your question to me is like, what do you do to then keep going? And that's a very personal question. Not that I mind sharing it, not personal like that, but it needs to be your why kicks in roundabout then. And sometimes you need a really good team to remind you of that. Now, I had a lot of reasons that I needed to make it across that channel, a lot of personal reasons. In those days, we didn't have WhatsApps and that, but I had hundreds of people following me on my brother was on the boat and he was SMSing them and photos. And so you're very well aware and on every feed. So you stop every sort of half an hour, whatever you decide, and they throw you liquid and carbs so you can hydrate. You want to drink it there while you tread water. They will then read some of these messages to you. So just when you're thinking of saying, I want to pull out, you hear a message from someone important to you and go, well, you know what? I'm going to make it to the next half hour. But what I tell audiences, which is absolutely true for me, that was a pivotal moment in my life, absolute pivotal moment, because first time in my life, I reached a place where it was impossible for me to go on. My mind, it was finished. Yet somehow, somewhere, I had flicked the switch that I talk about, that had changed me from from a self-protect way of looking at my challenges and a self-quitting way and a believing in this very powerful defense mechanism. And I opened my vision to do what I call self-explore. And I put my head back down and I made it in bite-sized chunks. I stopped looking for France. I just looked for the next feed. I shortened my feed. So all I had to do was a few more meters. My brother had a list of things that I'd given him that if I show any sign of weakness, that's the paragraph he needs to read to me. And he read that to me and it triggered something totally. And even though the trigger doesn't go, oh, well, I've got this, I can do another 5 hours, it gives you an extra few strokes. And once you've done those extra few strokes, you can go, you know what, 50 strokes ago, I didn't think I could do 50 strokes, yet I did it. How did I do that? Come on, we can do more.
I have an example from business. In my business, I recently managed to become a B Corp, and I had my eye on the ball of reaching that goal of B Corp, and it seemed impossible. It just the whole impact assessment tool just didn't seem fit for my business. When I stopped focusing on the big goal and just making these small incremental small steps, 4 years later I made it to the finish line, and that's also it wouldn't have worked if I kept my eye on the goal. It just I kept going, making these incremental small changes, and it took forever, but I'm very proud of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations to you. That's absolutely fantastic. And
I'd like to ask you a question about the comfort zone and the dangers of operating in the comfort zone. You have a TED talk on that. Can you explore a little bit about being stuck in a good place and how it potentially can keep you from striving for something better, something more noble, or something, I don't know?
yeah, so, very simply, if you don't get out your comfort zone, you cannot learn new stuff because that's what you do every day and it's where you're comfortable, but you're doing nothing new. Every now and then something might factor in, but you're not doing anything. So if you're not learning new stuff, you cannot grow as a person. But you're not learning, so you're not growing. And when you stop growing, you are definitely going to get overtaken by those who are. It's as simple as that. Now, that sounds nice and easy, so just get out your comfort zone. The problem is, as I said at the beginning, is a lot of people don't know they're in that comfort zone. And that is exactly what that default setting of this human mind is designed to do. It's designed to make you believe in your own limitations. Because when you believe in them, you have no reason to challenge them, right? You are putting food on the table, there's a roof over your head, you're doing well, you're hitting your number, your boss is happy, everything's good, so life is great. And that's also good. I advocate for that. I don't think everyone should do everything out of the comfort zone all the time. Comfort zones are nice. I live in a comfort zone in a lot of areas of my life. But every now and then, more often than not, it's time to get out of it. And the way you get out of it, when I sit with people, I always, there's a bit of a trick, and I do some coaching as well. And when I chat to people, I always ask them, have you set yourself a goal this year, whatever the story is? And without fail, everyone's like, yeah, I've set a really tough goal. Whew, it's very tough. So I'm like, oh, tell me a little bit about it. Do you know how you're going to achieve that goal? Yep, I know exactly how I'm going to achieve it. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do that. And if that happens, then I'll do that. So I say, so you've got a roadmap from there to there. And if you follow those steps, you've got that very tough goal that you've set. Yep. And then I say, well, mate, you are firmly in your comfort zone. If you're setting goals, no matter how hard they look to other people or to you, you are within a comfort zone. If you know how you're going to achieve that goal, you're staying in your lane. It's the goal on the other side of the line where you go, ooh, yikes, I'm not sure I'm going to get that, but I really want it, but not for me. Other people will be able to, not I. That's the goal that's going to push you out the comfort zone. That's the goal that you're going to learn stuff. And that's the goal that's going to help you grow when you learn it. Now, it does open the door to vulnerability. It does open the door to failure and humiliation and consequence and all those nasty things that we avoid as humans. But there's another whole session that I give on failing forward. Those are important lessons. Failure without the lessons and out the vulnerability and out the acknowledgement is just failure. There is a bad failure. So we've almost been conditioned now that everyone must fail because it's very important. No, but failure is very much an important part of growth, but you've got to do it right. Okay. Anyway, I'm skewing off the path a little bit. So yeah, where was I? If you don't get out your comfort zone, you're not going to learn that new stuff. You're not going to grow. You will get overtaken. So actively look for goals that you don't think you can achieve. I'd say 95% of the time you're going to surprise yourself and you will achieve them. That's the platform you then stand on to set your next goal. You don't set another goal from here. And that's the beauty of growth. It never stops. And it's...
You mentioned twice that it's very important to connect with people that help you get out of your comfort zone or to engage in some new activity. So there was the swimming group,
Yeah.
and the other part, I don't know, you mentioned somewhere else, but surrounding yourself with people that put you out of your comfort zone, or how important is that?
Well, for me, it was very important. I found when I started the swimming journey, I found a bunch of like-minded mates, and who were also fascinated by the cold and also interested in pushing themselves. And of course, when you're with a bunch of mates, in my case, is now sort of early in your 30s, there's a lot of testosterone. I want to do a bit better than him, and he wants to do a bit better than me, and you start challenging each other. Then also you invited, or you see a challenge that you might want to take on. We got involved in Russia and Siberia, and people would say, "Hey, we've heard about you guys. Come and we want you to do this with us." And you go, "Whoa!" Now, honestly, in the early days, by myself, I would have gone, even though I understand the preachings, I'm not going to Siberia to do that. I'm going to die. But when you got a bunch of like-minded mates or people who you might say, you know what, I'm as scared of you, but why don't we go? You got that little bit of safety in numbers. And I use that a lot. And there were also people who opened doors that I would never have opened. So that, teamwork and associating with the right people, let's put it that way, for the journey you're on can be a huge accelerator. In the more recent years, I have been doing it myself. So the group dynamic is mostly gone. I still got all my mates and we do a lot together, but I'm more on a personal journey for myself and finding things that really excite me, and just figuring out how to get them done.
Yeah, we have a lot of followers that are a part of entrepreneurs organization, and I guess these people know the power of putting yourself in situations where you have to share with, you have to get out of your comfort zone and to get inspired by other people. So that's a large part of our where we came from. And basically, this whole starting this whole podcast was an example of getting out of the comfort zone and see what else is possible. So I think life is a big what's next, and let's see if it works or not. That's one of the main takeaways that we like to share from Love Not Fear. Do what you love, proceed, and see where it gets you. And it took you to amazing places. I mean, you're all over the world sharing this story, and you have a large following. And look what it brought you. So personally, I find it very inspiring to learn about it, and also the fact that you were not born a superhero that, of course, was going to do these things. So it was these incremental mental steps and overcoming this fear. But I haven't heard you use the word love, for the love of things. So you're motivated away from stuff. But what does love mean for you?
Well, it's a great question because the name of your podcast, Love Not Fear. I became quite fascinated in finding things that I feared and trying to get them done because I was steering away from fear. And what I've realized over the years is a lot of what I truly feared in the beginning is now very much in the love category, because the benefits of that I feared the most, if I kept them in the fear box and never dabbled in that box, I'd be a very different person. As you say, my life, I now travel the world helping people and teaching and standing on stages and, all over the place. So if I didn't conquer that fear and convert it into a love, my life would be very, very different. So I still have fears, don't get me wrong. But I think if you don't have any fear in your life, A, I think you're kidding. It's not true. And B, it's not necessarily love that challenges you. It's fear that challenges you to get outside a comfort zone, in my opinion. And maybe we can unpack that, because some people are scared to love. It's sometimes hard to do that in your personal life, I suppose, because that's full commitment and vulnerability and all those different things that come with it. But in the sporting realm, changing what I feared the most into what I love the most has been life-changing for me.
Wow. It's a funny thing. A lot of people fear public speaking. And once they step into that area and learn to public speak, they start to love it. So indeed, one thing you can fear can become the thing you love. That's very interesting. Yeah. Well, Ryan, we have to be respectful of your time. You had a hard deadline. I would like to thank you for this very inspirational talk. And yeah, one little anecdote: when we took that swim in Dubai, you went a little further than I, because I was with another guy who had to stay close with. What happened when you got out of the port? There were some crazy stories. At one point, you got guns pointed at you.
I got into big trouble. I didn't realize I was going to get into such big trouble. So in Dubai, instead of swimming between the walls that you and I were swimming between the piers in the harbor at the hotel, I swam around and went out to sea and along the coast. And I had, I was going into my own zone and just enjoying it. But there was something telling me that there was something wrong. And I was probably, I don't know, 600, 700 meters off the coast. But I eventually stopped and had a look, and there were lots of people running along the beach with loudspeakers and yelling at me and waving. Now, in South African waters, if you see that, you're about to be eaten by a great white shark. So it wasn't a very nice feeling for me. But I treaded water for a while, and I know there are no great white sharks there. And I realized that I was in some form of trouble. I didn't really understand it. But instead of swimming to the beach, where I knew I was going to get in trouble, I swam all the way back to our hotel, where I got into lots of trouble from the management. And it turns out what I was doing, I was swimming around and into a VIP shake area. And that's a complete no-no in Dubai, apparently. But the anecdote I love the most is later I was in a Uber taxi driving somewhere, and I told the Uber driver the story. So he says, in South Africa, it's a shark. In Dubai, it's a shake. I love that.
Well, I don't know which one to fear most. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure having you. And hope we'll get to swim one more time. I would really like that. Maybe in Cape Town. Thank you.
I would love to. Thank you so much for the invitation to your podcast, and to all the listeners, and of course the EO members as well. I love EO. I've spoken to EO chapters around the world, and that journey I hope continues as well. So Eduard, I hope we meet again, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Well, if you like this podcast, like and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next time.